Pay attention if you want to know more about keeping your guitar in tune. Evertune bridges, they seem to be an extremely divisive topic among guitar players these days. Either it's the best thing since sliced bread or it's the worst thing to ever happen to guitar playing ever. I happen to fall into the camp where I think it's an incredible innovation, and over the past 12 months or so it's become an indispensable thing for me in terms of recording and live playing and even just chilling at home and jamming and coming up with riff ideas. You know, when you're in like a creative flow, the most annoying thing is something that kind of interrupts that. Be it the guitar not being in tune, knocking over your coffee, the girlfriend asking you something and you not really paying attention. So what I wanted to do a video about was retrofitting Evertune, because I couldn't find any videos on this myself when I was researching the topic. So what we're going to cover is the criteria for retrofitting Evertune to your guitar, what the guitar needs to be, things you need to bear in mind, my experience of having it retrofitted, and any potential upsides, downsides, things like that. So before we go on, credit to Shuka Guitars. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. Shuka is one of the licensed Evertune installers currently working in the UK. He's carried out the retrofit on my Schecter SLS that we'll show in a minute. And he's also supplied me with all this really useful information, and there's an email chain of about 20 different emails of me asking and picking his brain, and he's been brilliant in getting back to me. So thanks very much, John at Shuka Guitars. So the first thing to think about is what does the guitar need to be to have an Evertune retrofitted to it? What's the criteria? First of all, it needs to be 43 millimeters in thickness across the body of the guitar. So this is to allow for room to route out the cavity to actually fit the Evertune mechanism, which is quite substantial. So this may preclude things like vintage instruments, like I know certain Ibanez S models are very thin, so like you probably couldn't fit one to that. But it does cover the majority of guitar bodies, actually, that thickness. The other thing to bear in mind with that criteria is the archtop style body on a guitar. So in a minute we'll take a look at my Schecter that I've had an Evertune retrofitted to, and this guitar was archtop. So that was my question to John at Shuka, was does this make a difference? And actually, as it turns out, it only needs to be 43 millimeters across the middle thickness of the guitar. So where the pickups are, where the strings line up with the neck. As long as it meets that thickness criteria in the middle, you'll have enough room to retrofit it. The third criteria to think about is, does my guitar have a Floyd Rose bridge? And if it does, can Evertune be fitted to a guitar with a Floyd Rose bridge? The surprising answer is yes. And this was something that surprised me even when I was talking to John at Shuka about it. Basically, it involves adding wood back into the cavity in a lot of cases. And it involves coming up with a blanking plate solution to fill in the extra width of the cavity left by removing the Floyd Rose. So if you look at this example picture supplied by Shuka Guitars, you can see on this white Ibanez, they fitted a matte black blanking plate where a Floyd Rose used to be, and the Evertune is in place. And if you're wondering, can that blanking plate be different finishes, different colors? Yeah, of course it can. It's going to cost you more money than a more straightforward hip shot or Gibraltar style installation, but it can be done. And that was something that really surprised me. So let's have a look at my Schecter C1 SLS Black Fade that I had an Evertune retrofitted to. So this is my main recording guitar for 6-string work. Reason being is it's just super comfortable. I can just sit here with the guitar across my lap on the sofa or whatever, and I don't even need to think, or I don't need to work too hard. Hopefully you all have an instrument like that where it's just like an extension of your body, and this is it for me. And originally this guitar came with a hip shot bridge, which are great, super comfortable, super non-intrusive on your hand. Tuning stability was pretty decent. But being as this is the guitar that I use for all my recording, and being as I own probably more guitars with Evertune than without, I felt like I've just got to get Evertune retrofitted to this thing. So the process of getting it fitted was really straightforward. You know, it was a case of checking whether it met the minimum criteria we just spoke about. shipping it off to one of Evertune's licensed installers. So if you go on their website, you input your country, your address and everything, they will give you a list of the closest Evertune installers. Mine was about 4 hours away, so I ended up couriering this guitar in its case up to Schuker. I'm in the south of Britain, Schuker's in the north. And then a couple of weeks later it arrived back, and I can't fault the job done. It really does look like it came that way from factory. Evertune give you a choice of finishes. I got gloss black to match the gloss black hardware on the guitar. I think it looks really cool. Some people absolutely hate the way Evertune looks. I think it looks really cool. I don't see a problem really. I don't think it's any more intrusive than a Floyd Rose bridge or anything like that. So what were the lessons I learned from having an Evertune retrofitted to my guitar? Well, there's a few things you probably do need to bear in mind, having owned this guitar originally and owning it now. So what's changed? Well, the guitar's slightly heavier. It was already reasonably heavy, being a neck through and everything. But I wouldn't say it's put me off the guitar. It's not heavy to the point where I'm like, oh, Jesus. You know, that's reserved for my Solar E1.7, which is an absolute spine buster. The other thing to bear in mind is a lot of people who are down on Evertune, who think it's evil and like the enemy of nice guitars, they say things like it sucks the tone out of the guitar, you lose resonance, you lose sustain, things like that. Well, this guitar, prior to having Evertune fitted, was easily my most resonant guitar acoustically, meaning that if I was just sat there playing unplugged, it was super loud. That's probably owed to the fact it's really well made. So has that diminished at all now I've had Evertune fitted? Well, some days I think it has, some days I think it hasn't, which should probably give you an indication of if there is a difference, it's really minor. I mean, science tells you that the strings now going through a saddle, a spring, a lever, a whole complicated arrangement, you're going to lose some resonance. That's just fact, that's just science. To me, I don't think it's any big of a change than if you were to have a Floyd Rose. I can't for sure say there is a difference. Sometimes I think there is, sometimes I think there isn't. One more thing I would say to think about with having Evertune retrofitted to your guitar is what's going on the back of the guitar. So let's flip this over. You can see here that on the back of this guitar now is a really large backing plate covering the Evertune mechanism. It's bigger than a Floyd Rose backing plate would be. It's probably the biggest backing plate you could have fitted, I think. So number one, it's something to think about with if that's going to bother you. If you have something really nice on the back of your guitar that you want to preserve, if it's going to bother you, the fact that the backing plate is slightly raised. So it's about, I don't know, a millimeter off the guitar. So, I don't know, is that going to bother you? It doesn't bother me one bit. If you're wearing clothes, I doubt you could even feel it. So all you naked guitar players out there, this is something to think about. The other thing was, and I didn't think about this when I was sending the guitar off, and this actually came up whilst it was with John at Schuker Guitars, was the battery cavity for the active pickups. So if you take a look here, what John's actually had to do is custom fit the Evertune backing plate around the cavity for the active Fishmans I've got fitted to this guitar. It's interesting. I'm glad the battery cavity wasn't further into the body because it probably could have been a problem then. So I think this is probably something to think about that maybe isn't obvious if you're thinking of having Evertune fitted to your guitar. Do I have active pickups? If I do, where's the battery cavity located? Is it going to encroach on the backing plate of the guitar? Now in this part of the video, I was going to show you some sound samples of distorted recordings I've done before and after. But it's totally pointless because it doesn't sound any different. It's the same amp through my headrush modeler, the same everything. I kept it all the same, volume, everything, right? And it just sounds like I'm playing you two of the same clip back to back. So there's absolutely, for me, there's no difference whatsoever in the recording sound this guitar is giving me. And I think that's a big thing that people think is a downside of Evertune, that you're going to lose tone, you're going to lose resonance, you're going to lose sustain, you're going to whatever. I'm not here to argue it either way. But what I can say is my experience having owned guitars with Evertune, both from the factory and having now had one retrofitted to a really resonant guitar, is I don't think I've lost anything. And for me, what I've gained in tuning stability and what I've gained in a tool that enables me to get in creative flow and stay there and not have to think, oh crap, I need to stop and tune, or damn, was that take in tune, and oh no, it's like a cent sharp, and all these things that come up when you record as often as I do. For me, it's been great. If you have any questions at all, chuck them in the comments. If you completely disagree with everything I've said, chuck it in the comments and we'll have a civilized discussion, hopefully. If you found this video helpful, help me by subscribing and liking the video. And once again, thanks very much to John at Sugar Guitars for helping me out with all this extra info and for doing a brilliant job with my Schecter C1 SLS. See you next time.